I'd been counting down the days, not on a calendar or in my phone, just quietly in my head. Every lecture, every late-night study session, every instant noodle dinner in my dorm was one day closer to coming home. It had been months. Months. Since I'd sat at the kitchen table, half listening to my mom talk about her garden while scrolling through my phone. Months since I'd heard the sound of my dad's old coffee machine sputtering in the morning. That low, comforting hiss like the house itself was waking up. The drive from campus to home wasn't anything remarkable, just a couple of highways. A few small towns, but today it felt warmer somehow. Like every mile was peeling away the exhaustion of the semester. I rolled down the window, let the wind mess up my hair. The air smelled like late summer, that mix of sun-warmed asphalt and faint hints of cut grass. I passed the same gas station I used to stop at in high school. The one where the cashier always gave me a free pack of gum if I was short on change. It was all so familiar, comforting. The kind of comfort you don't really notice until you've been gone long enough to miss it. As I drove through the old part of town, I caught myself smiling at stupid little things. The faded mural on the side of the bakery, the crooked street sign at Willow and Main that's been tilted for as long as I can remember. And the closer I got, the more I pictured at home. My room exactly how I left it. The desk with my half-finished sketchpad. The stack of paperbacks by the window. The quilt my grandmother made folded at the foot of the bed. I could almost smell the faint mix of laundry detergent and that warm, cozy scent rooms get after years of holding someone's life inside, in my head. I could see Mom's face when I walked in the way she'd probably wipe. Her hands on a dish towel and hug me before I even dropped my bag. I could see Dad leaning in the doorway with that small, proud smile he tries to hide. I don't know why, but I held on to that image like it was a promise. The tires hummed against the road, my favorite playlist filling the car. The sky was that. Perfect late afternoon gold, the kind that makes everything look like it's been dusted in honey. I thought, yeah, this is exactly how it's supposed to feel. I didn't know that in less than 15 minutes that warm, certain feeling would be gone. And once it was gone, I'd never get it back. I turned onto my street, expecting that slow, familiar wave of calm to sink in, the way it always did when I was just a few houses away from mine. Instead, my eyes caught on something that didn't belong. It was standing right there on our lawn, a big white for sale sign, except someone had slapped a bright red sold sticker across it. At first, I didn't even register it properly. My brain just sort of skipped over it, like when you see someone in the wrong uniform at work and it takes a second to click. I actually laughed, one of those short, awkward laughs you do when you're confused. I thought, weird. Must be the neighbor's sign. Maybe it fell over into our yard. But no, it was planted firmly in the middle of our grass. The post. Sunk deep into the dirt. Not something that could have just tipped over from next door. That's when my stomach tightened. Not painfully, just enough to make me shift in my seat. My hands suddenly felt a little clammy on the steering wheel. I slowed down, craning my neck like getting a better angle would make it make sense. The house looked the same pale. Blue siding, same chipped mailbox, same maple tree in the front. But the sign didn't lie. I actually said out loud to no one, "No, that's not right." And because my brain clearly wasn't ready to deal with whatever this was, I started making excuses. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe Mom and Dad are selling part of the land. Maybe it's just temporary, It's one of those weird realtor mix dash-ups. Yeah, sure, because realtors often accidentally sell people's homes without them knowing. I kept driving slowly, my pulse picking up without my permission. The afternoon light that had felt warm and golden just a minute ago suddenly looked harsh. The house was too bright, like it was being spotlighted for a scene I hadn't rehearsed for. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my heart was in my throat. I still hadn't let the real possibility in, not fully. I was clinging to this ridiculous hope that I'd walk inside, mention the sign, and my parents would laugh it off. Looking back now, I think part of me already knew the truth. I just wasn't ready to name it yet. I eased my car into the driveway, still telling myself it was all some weird misunderstanding. And then I saw them, cardboard boxes, stacked haphazardly on the curb. Not just any boxes, my boxes. I knew them instantly. The duct-taped one with the rip in the corner from moving day last year. The plastic crate with my name scrawled on the side in black marker. The faded blue laundry basket I'd had since freshman year of high school. They were just sitting there, out in the open, the wind catching the edges of loose flaps. A sleeve from one of my hoodies was poking out like it was trying to escape. I put the car in park but didn't get out right away. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring like maybe if I looked long enough, the boxers would turn into something else. When I finally stepped out, the air hit me, the smell of freshly cut grass mixed with something faintly sour. Like damp cardboard baking in the sun, I walked closer. My sneakers crunched on bits of gravel scattered across the curb. My eyes scanned the boxes books I'd bought with leftover birthday money. Photo frames with the glass cracked from past moves. My old varsity jacket half hanging out of a torn bag. And it wasn't just the fact that my things were outside. It was how they were outside. Not carefully packed like someone cared. Not stacked like they were waiting for me to come get them. Just dumped. Like the contents of my life had been scooped up and tossed without thought. A gust of wind blew. One of my sketchbooks open, flipping the pages like a nervous hand. I stepped forward, scooping it up before it could blow into the street. My handwriting, my little doodles in the margins, all of it suddenly felt like artifacts from a life I wasn't sure I still had. I remember glancing toward the front door, half expecting it to swing open and my parents to appear with sheepish smiles, explaining everything. But the door stayed closed. The windows stared back at me, blank and unfamiliar, and that's when it hit, that sharp, metallic sting in my chest. Betrayal doesn't always come with a loud crash. Sometimes it's quiet, creeping, and it smells like your childhood home on a summer afternoon. I wanted to shout, to pound on the door, to demand an explanation. But all I did was stand there on the curb, feeling smaller than I had in years. I didn't even think. I just grabbed my phone and hit Mom in my contacts. 1 ring. 2, straight to voicemail. Hey Mom, it's me. I'm home and there's boxes. Call me back, okay? My voice sounded too high, like I was trying to sound casual and failing miserably. I hung up and immediately hit Dad. Same thing, straight to voicemail. By the 3rd attempt, back to Mom again. I wasn't bothering with messages. Just hanging up and redialing, as if sheer persistence would somehow break through whatever wall was between us. The boxes sat there beside me, silent and accusing. A loose sheet of notebook paper fluttered out of one in the wind, landing at my feet. It was my handwriting, a list of groceries from last year, doodled with stupid little smiley faces. I stuffed it back into the box and looked at my phone again. No missed calls. No texts. That's when I started sending messages, not carefully worded ones, just raw, choppy bursts. What's going on? Why is our stuff outside? Where are you? Each one sent. Each one left undelivered. I don't know how long I stood there, just pacing the strip of sidewalk between the boxes and my car, hitting redial over and over. My fingers were trembling partly from the heat, partly from the creeping realization that nobody was going to pick up. Finally, I scrolled down to Mrs. Green, our next-door neighbor, since before I was born. She was the kind of neighbor who always brought over a plate of cookies at Christmas and yelled at me if I parked too close to her driveway. It rang twice before she answered, her voice cautious. Hello, Mrs. Green. It's me. I just got home from school and I had to stop, swallow hard. There's boxes, my stuff, and there's a sold sign. Do you know what's going on? There was a pause. Not long, but long enough for me to feel it in my stomach. Oh, honey. Her voice had that soft, pitying tone people use when they don't want to say something awful. They sold the house weeks ago. I thought you knew. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd that my brain had no other reaction ready. No, I didn't know. Where did they go? Another pause. They said they were moving out of state. Something about starting fresh. I'm so sorry. Starting fresh. Without me, I don't remember what I said after that, if I even said goodbye. I just stood there with the phone pressed to my ear long after she'd hung up, listening to the deadline, feeling like I'd been erased from my own family's life, and the time it takes to make a decision I wasn't even part of it came back. To me all at once, not gradually, not like a gentle wave, but like someone had yanked open a drawer in my mind and dumped everything out onto the floor. The day I left for college, it was one of those mornings where the air still smelled faintly of night, cool, damp, a little earthy. The sun was just starting to stretch across the neighborhood, turning the windows of our house into rectangles of gold. I'd packed the night before, cramming clothes, notebooks, and way too many coffee mugs into the back of my car. Mom made breakfast, even though I wasn't hungry, scrambled eggs that went cold on my plate because I kept looking at the clock. Dad was quiet, leaning against the kitchen counter, sipping from his chipped mug that said "Number 1 Dad" in faded letters. Every now and then, he'd glance out the window like he was checking the weather, but I knew he was just avoiding my eyes. When it was finally time to go, we stood on the porch. My heart was pounding, half with excitement, half with the nervousness of starting something completely new. Mom hugged me first that long, warm hug where she smelled faintly like laundry detergent and coffee. "This will always be your home," she'd said, her voice thick but steady, no matter what. Dad didn't hug me right away, just rested a hand on my shoulder and gave me this small, proud smile. "Go make us proud," he said. Then he waved as I walked down the steps, the kind of wave you give someone when you know you'll see them soon. I remember backing out of the driveway, glancing up to see them both still there, Mom holding onto the porch railing, Dad with one hand shielding his eyes from the sun. They looked solid, permanent. That image, the two of them framed in the doorway, the house behind them, had been my anchor. Anytime college got overwhelming, I'd picture that scene and remind myself they're there. That's there. Can always come back. And now, that same memory felt like someone had lit it on fire from the inside. This will always be your home. Except, it wasn't mine anymore. The porch where they'd stood was probably holding someone else's shoes now. The kitchen counter where Dad leaned was maybe stacked with mail from strangers. My room, my sanctuary, might already have been repainted, my posters ripped down, a quilt stuffed into one of the boxes on the curb. The worst part wasn't that they'd sold the house. It was that they'd made that promise knowing at some point they could break it. And I'd believed them without question. I was still standing there, phone in hand, when I heard the low hum of an engine. A silver SUV turned onto the street and slowed as it approached the driveway. For a split second, my heart leaped, some part of me still hoping it was them pulling in with an explanation, telling me there'd been a mistake, but the car was too new to clean. It rolled into the driveway like it belonged there. The doors opened, and a family climbed out, a man in a collared shirt, a woman in jeans with her hair pulled back, two kids carrying grocery bags that looked heavier than they could handle. They didn't hesitate, didn't look around like they were visiting. They just walked toward the front door with the kind of ease that comes from knowing you don't have to knock. I froze. Every instinct told me I should move. Say something, explain why I was standing there in front of their house, but my feet felt anchored to the pavement. The man noticed me first. He gave me that polite, wary half smile you give strangers on your property. Can I help you?" I couldn't get words out. My throat was dry, and when I finally spoke, my voice cracked. "I used to live here?" The woman shifted her grocery bag higher on her hip, glancing toward the boxes on the curb. "Oh, are you here to pick those up? We were wondering." I nodded automatically, even though my brain was still catching up. Yeah, there. Mine. One of the kids, a boy with messy hair, peered at me curiously. "You lived here before us?" I forced a smile. "For a long time." The man stepped past me to unlock the door. As it swung open, I caught a glimpse inside. The entryway stripped of the old rug, the walls bare where family photos used to hang. The air that drifted out smelled faintly of fresh paint, erasing any trace of us. They disappeared inside with their groceries, and the door closed behind them. Just like that, I was standing on the front lawn of a place I no longer had the right to call mine. The strangest part, I felt like I was the one trespassing, like I was the intruder. I looked down at the boxes again. My entire history with this house reduced to cardboard and tape, and the sound of that lock clicking behind me was louder than any slammed door I've ever heard. That night, I checked into the cheapest motel I could find. The kind with flickering neon outside and curtains that smelled faintly of stale cigarettes. No matter how tightly they were drawn, the boxes I'd managed to fit in my car sat in a heap by the door, like quiet witnesses. I didn't bother unpacking. I just collapsed onto the bed, staring up at the cracked ceiling. My phone lying on my chest like it weighed 100 pounds. I must have called and texted them a dozen more times. Still nothing. It was past 9 when my phone finally buzzed. Not from them, but from my cousin, Jenna. We hadn't spoken in months, but her name lighting up the screen felt like a small thread of hope. "Hey," she said, her voice cautious. "You found out?" I sat up. "Found out what? That my house is gone? That my stuff was sitting in the sun all afternoon?" She exhaled slowly. The kind of sigh people give when they wish they didn't have to be the one to say what's coming next. "They sold the house about a month ago. Packed up, moved to," she hesitated, "Florida." Florida. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Why? Without even telling me. They had debts, big ones. I guess the house was the only way to clear them fast, and trailed off like she was bracing for my reaction. "They thought it was best this way, you know, so you wouldn't worry. Best this way." It hit me harder than the fact they'd left. Harder than seeing strangers carry groceries through my front door. Best this way meant they'd sat down, talked it over, and decided that cutting me out entirely was the better option. That disappearing was cleaner, that I was. Una. Didn't even know what to say. My chest felt tight, my jaw locked in place. Jenna kept talking, saying she was sorry, that she thought I already knew. I barely heard her. My mind was somewhere else, in the kitchen, at the porch. In all the places where I'd stood with them, thinking we were solid. Now, I realized they'd been making decisions without me long before the sign went up on the lawn. We hung up, and I was alone again in the motel room. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence, steady and indifferent. I stared at the ceiling, those 3 words echoing in my head. Best this way, best this way, best this way. The motel ceiling had this faint water stain in the corner, shaped vaguely like a continent I couldn't place. I stared at it for hours, the air conditioner rattling like it was trying to shake me out of my own head. I kept replaying the day in loops, pulling into the street, the sold sign, the boxes, the strangers at the door, Jenna's voice saying best this way at first. I was numb, just hollow, like my brain had flipped some internal breaker switch to keep me from overheating. But numbness never lasts. It started with disbelief, this stubborn, childish voice in my head, insisting there had to be another explanation. Maybe they'd been forced out suddenly. Maybe someone had lied to them. Maybe they were in trouble and couldn't risk contacting me, but those excuses didn't hold. They'd had time to tell me. They'd had my number. They'd chosen silence. And then came the anger. It wasn't loud or explosive. It was a slow burn, the kind that starts deep in your chest and spreads until your skin feels too tight. I thought about every time they'd lectured me about family sticking together. Every holiday where they'd said this is what matters. Every moment I'd felt guilty for not calling more often while they were planning an exit strategy that didn't include me. Wanted to smash something to drive back to that house and rip the sold sign out of the ground with my bare hands to ask them how it felt to erase their own kid from the blueprint of their lives. But the rage couldn't hold either. It crumbled, leaving only that deep, aching loss. It wasn't just a house I'd lost. It was the one place I thought would always be there, no matter how much life shifted. It was the belief that no matter how far I went, someone would be waiting when I came back. Now, that place didn't exist anymore. And neither did that version of my parents, the ones who waved from the porch, who promised permanence. The grief was physical. It sat heavy in my chest, pressed against my ribs. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Crying felt too final. like accepting that this was real. I rolled over and stared at the pile of boxes by the door. It struck me that this was all I had left of my childhood, my family, my home, compressed into cardboard, taped shut, and shoved into a cheap motel room that smelled like someone else's life. Sometime near dawn, I stopped trying to sleep. I just lay there, waiting for the sun to come up. It's wondering how you're supposed to rebuild trust when the people you trusted most are the ones who knocked it down. 2 days passed. 2 days of waking up in that motel, staring at my phone like maybe this would be the morning they'd finally call back. 2 days of sending messages that went from long emotional paragraphs to short, bitter lines. Guess I know where we stand. Don't bother nothing. It's strange how silence can get louder the longer it stretches. By the third morning, it was deafening. When I decided I was done, it wasn't a dramatic movie moment. No yelling, no hurling my phone across the room. Just this quiet click inside me, like a lock turning. I couldn't keep calling people who clearly didn't care to be found. I packed slowly, methodically. The boxes I could fit went into the trunk and back seat. Clothes, books, my sketchbooks. A few framed photos I couldn't leave behind. The rest, the bulkier stuff. Things too heavy or too awkward to cram into my little car, stayed in the motel room for now. When I drove back to the house to see if I'd left anything, new owners had already pushed some of my boxes further down the curb, probably assuming I wasn't coming back. I stood there for a long minute, the sun beating down on my neck, the sound of a lawnmower humming somewhere down the street. I took what I could carry, the rest I left. It felt wrong, walking away from pieces of my life like they were trash. But at the same time, there was a strange relief in it. The less I took, the less I had tying me to this place, to them. When I slid into the driver's seat, I didn't look at the house again. I just started the engine, a hum of it drowning out everything else, somewhere between the first and second turn out of the neighborhood. I realized I hadn't thought about where I was going next. I only knew I wasn't coming back here, and that was enough. It's been 8 months. I live in a different city now. Not far enough to erase everything, but far enough that I can go weeks without thinking about that street, that porch, that sign. My apartment is small. 1 bedroom, creaky. Floors, a kitchen that barely fits a table for 2. But it's mine. Every dish in the cupboard, every picture on the wall, every blanket draped over the couch, all of it is here because I put it here. No one can take it without me knowing. The ache is still there. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't, but it's quieter now, less of a stabbing pain and more of a dull echo. Sometimes it catches me off guard, like when I smell fresh-cut grass in late summer, or when a porch light flickers just like ours used to. I don't wait for the phone to ring anymore. I don't imagine explanations or apologies. The truth is, I don't want them. Not because I wouldn't listen, but because I've realized they wouldn't change anything. I've stopped asking why. The why doesn't build walls or pay rent or make dinner. The why keeps you parked outside a house that isn't yours anymore. Now my life is smaller, simpler. My circle is tighter. The people in it have proven they're not the kind to vanish without warning. Maybe that's what I needed all along. Not more people, but better ones. Some nights I'll sit by the window with a cup of tea and watch. The street below, no one here knows the story. To them, I'm just another neighbor. And strangely, I like it that way, because I've learned something I wish I'd known sooner. Family isn't the place you come back to. It's the people who never leave you out on the curb in the first place, and those people, I have them now.